Do you think corruption is a big problem in society?
Yes, I do.
And what about yourself?
Definitely, it is.
And to what extent do you feel it is? Is it just something that you think you see on just on everyday experience, or do you really feel it's all around us at every level of society? Would you say?
I think that people are led to believe to always think about what's wrong.
But do you think we can solve issues of corruption in society?
Yeah, I do, but it's each individual's got to decide to live differently to what the masses do, and that they don't just have to get their rights.
Call us, email us, tweet or Facebook us. 3 little words, two-way television.
With trust eroding in our leaders and authority figures, it isn't just the whistleblowers who work for genuine accountability. Transparency International Canada is dedicated to ending corruption here in government, politics, and society. Meet an international trade lawyer who helped found that group, Milos Borichevsky. Welcome to Context. Thank you. Great, thank you. Wow, we have had a shocking season in Canada where we just didn't expect to see it coming from the Senate, from Montreal, from mayor's offices. What is the common Canadian thread on all of this?
I think you put your finger on it previously. It's accountability. So what we've seen in a range of incidents, scandals, investigations, criminal charges is some very harsh, hard at the coalface corruption, like the Montreal bid rigging and bribery scandals. And then we've seen things that are a little less still in the unlawful context, the investigations at the Senate, election campaign finance, violations by the government, by various parties, not just the governing party. And then you go further down the line, things that aren't necessarily legal violations, but raise issues of accountability.
Is it worse in Canada than it was 5 years ago?
I would say it's not. People have become more conscious of it, and particularly in the past 3, 4, 5 years, the law enforcement and administrative machinery has become more acutely and finely tuned to start looking at this stuff. We have a long way to go.
Okay, because you also have the Global Corruption Barometer. Tell us about that.
What you're alluding to is Transparency International's Global Corruption Perceptions Index. Now, Canada has done very well and frankly continues to do well. That said, there's been a bit of an ebb and flow. The first Global Corruption Perception Index was 1995. We did very well. I think we came out in 5th spot. And we hovered around 5th, 6th spot globally out of 150 plus countries for many, many years. And then I guess towards the mid-90s started slipping, mid-2000s, 2008 or so, I think we fell to 14th spot. Wow. We're back up to 9 now. Interestingly, even though the last year has seen a very substantial, as you pointed out, we've had a number of scandals, a number of incidents, number of investigations and so forth, but we've actually done well.
Still in the top 10 of
Absolutely.
honesty countries in the world. The larger corruption scale, then, how does that affect people watching this show? Why should we be worried about corruption? Well,
some fairly obvious things. Let's start with corruption. And again, it's not just the hard, illegal criminality. I'm talking bribery, that kind of thing. The failure of accountability systems undermines public trust and the rule of law. That's the first thing. Corruption, if it's about anything, is about rule of law.
And does it affects the poor then?
Of course, ultimately it does.
Tell us how that ripples down.
Probably the most blatant examples of corruption internationally, and the kind of thing that TI spends a huge amount of time both in doing technical assistance with governments, with civil society, with organizations, and with companies. I'm a corporate lawyer. I mean, I represent companies in international transactions. But in these transactions, what happens is if certain companies choose to buy business instead of competing for business, so let's take, for example, a major infrastructure project, a bridge, a highway. I recall we're doing work as counsel for the World Bank in the 90s, landing at an airport in a country that shall remain nameless in Central Africa, a massive airport that probably got maybe 6 flights a day. Interestingly, it was built by a Canadian company, but with, I believe, CETA funding, but that's another story. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was a white elephant. I mean, we've had our own white elephants in this country. Now, that kind of thing, if you think about it, massive amounts of money from Canada and many other countries get tagged as, or get essentially contributed as foreign aid, intended to help the poor of those countries. Instead, the money, and this is where corruption kicks in, it facilitates the siphoning of large amounts of that money into offshore accounts, but equally importantly, into services and goods that aren't needed.
Wow. The landscape is changing. We've got 30 RCMP investigations into corruption underway. What would be your advice for normal Canadians when they suspect corruption is afoot?
Well, I think if you're not directly implicated, I think the simplest thing to do is to pick up the phone or go on the RCMP's website, look for the link to the RCMP's anti-corruption initiative. There was a unit that was a standalone unit, which was a big thing. I mean, Canada had nobody in charge. Now there's a unit that deals with that.
We can now click online and report this kind of stuff.
Well, you can report it or phone the RCMP and report it. That's for the average citizen who's not directly implicated. It's a little more complicated, and this is probably where it arises more frequently for an employee in a company who finds that something's going on in the company, or the person may be implicated themselves.
You talked about rule of law, how important it has been to uphold this. Is this not also a morality problem?
Of course it is. I mean, law is about enforcing rules, norms of conduct with the coercive power of the state. Certain rules, like you drive on the left hand as opposed to the right hand side of the road, and it varies from country to country, are rules of you have to have a rule. If we all had a free-for-all, you know. Other rules are based on a judgment, a decision that our representatives, usually our elected representatives in this country, make as to what is the right thing. Now, you can call it morality, you can call it the right thing, you can call it any number of things, but there is a fundamental moral component in much of the law. It is ultimately about coercive rules backed by the power of the state. So yes, of course, but that's why I said at the outset, the common thread isn't just law or corruption. The common thread is accountability and conduct that undermines accountability, not just in government, but also at the corporate level.
And that's about as close to home as it gets. It is about my own accountability, our accountability. Milos, thank you very much. And Context is two-way television, so we want to put this question to you. Have you had personal experience with corruption? It could be fudging numbers on an expense account, or a brush with the so-called underground, or a tax-free economy. Sheldon, you may be a senator one day. What do you think?
You know what? Between you and I, Lauren, I'm actually holding out for Governor General. So yes, yes, you like that one, eh? You like that one. All right, no, but personally, I haven't really encountered any corruption personally. However, it surprises me to know how many people I do know who actually have, and they've had to kind of go through that process, whether to tell, whether to not. So it's been really interesting. And for those even watching at home, we want to hear from you on this poll question Lorna just raised. Please, let's connect, whether it's email, giving us a call, or on our social media sites. That's Twitter or Facebook. All the prompts, all the information, the poll questions located from you there. We want to hear from you. Can't wait to read it.
All right, thank you, Your Excellency Sheldon Neal. Let's find out if our viewers feel the same way. Coming up, through one family's story, you'll learn how international corruption affects families right here at home.